Actress Natalie Wood was found dead today.
Her body was found floating here.
Officials said she apparently drowned accidentally.
But nothing further on the circumstances.
For over 4 decades, one of Hollywood's most haunting mysteries has remained unsolved. What really happened to Natalie Wood on that cold November night in 1981? As new witnesses emerged, stories shifted, and suspicions grew. One name remained at the center of it all: Robert Wagner. But what exactly did he say? And what did he leave out? From chilling cries heard across dark waters to years of silence that spoke volumes, the pieces of this puzzle may finally be shifting. Did a quiet comment confirm long-whispered rumors? Or did it raise even more questions? The answers may be closer than ever, or just out of reach. What did Robert Wagner finally reveal? And why now? A delayed alarm. One of the most alarming aspects of Natalie Wood's tragic death in 1981 is the significant delay in reporting her missing. After an evening of heavy drinking and a tense atmosphere aboard the yacht Splendor, anchored off California's Catalina Island, Natalie reportedly vanished sometime around 11:00 p.m. Multiple witness accounts, including from the yacht's captain Dennis Davern, state that an argument had broken out between Wood and her husband, Robert Wagner, shortly before she disappeared. Despite this, Wagner did not immediately initiate a search or notify authorities. Instead, hours passed before any official help was requested. The U.S. Coast Guard wasn't contacted until approximately 3:30 a.m., more than 4 hours after Natalie was last seen. Even more concerning, Roger Smith, the captain of the rescue boat that eventually recovered Wood's body, stated that he wasn't alerted until around 5:11 a.m., nearly 6 hours after her disappearance. These delays were especially troubling considering the severe weather conditions that night, including rough waters and heavy winds, which would have made any accidental fall into the water immediately dangerous. The delayed response contradicted standard protocol for maritime emergencies, where time is critical for rescue efforts. Captain Dennis Davern later stated before the public that Wagner clearly instructed him not to turn on the boat's searchlights and to call for help. He said Wagner told him, "Don't do anything. Let's not turn on the searchlight." This delay, in conjunction with Wagner's decision to move the yacht to a more secluded harbor earlier that same day, fueled speculation further. According to Davern, Wagner was more interested in managing appearances than in finding his wife. Such revelations would be critical when the case was reinvestigated after several decades, since they indicated possible negligence or something worse. That was the crux of the delay in seeking help in the fueling of long-standing suspicion about Robert Wagner's involvement. Subsequently, investigators admitted that their chances of ascertaining the actual course of events on that particular night would have been considerably enhanced if they had been called much earlier. It is also noted that, in 2018, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department tagged Wagner as a person of interest due to inconsistencies in his own story and his refusal to cooperate with investigators. Prolonged silence on Natalie's disappearance is held as one of the most damaging aspects of circumstantial evidence that remains in a mystery that, as of now, has never been fully resolved. But the silence on that yacht didn't end there. Someone aboard had more to say. Captain Dennis Davern's testimony. Captain Dennis Davern, who was present aboard the Splendor the night Natalie Wood died, has long maintained that her death was not simply a tragic accident. Over the years, his testimony has evolved into one of the most critical and controversial elements of the case. Initially, Davern supported Robert Wagner's version of events, stating that Natalie must have slipped and fallen while trying to secure a dinghy. However, in the early 2000s, he began to change his story, revealing that he had been pressured to remain silent, and that Wagner may have been directly involved in the events leading to Natalie's death. In multiple interviews and a co-authored book titled Goodbye Natalie, Goodbye Splendor, Davern alleged that Wagner and Wood had a heated argument in the yacht's cabin shortly before she disappeared. He claimed that Wagner flew into a jealous rage over Natalie's closeness with her co-star Christopher Walken, who was also aboard that night. According to Davern, he heard furniture being thrown and the argument escalating, followed by sudden silence. Shortly afterward, Wagner allegedly came to him and said, "Natalie's missing," but instructed him not to turn on the yacht's searchlights or call for immediate help. More importantly, Davern stated in a 2011 Today interview that he thought Wagner was responsible for what happened to Natalie, and that he then lied to the police in the initial investigation in 1981, stating that Wagner coached him on what to say. When the investigation was reopened by the Los Angeles County Sheriff in 2011, Davern became the central figure in that case, as authorities stated that his updated testimony was viewed as credible. He insisted that had emergency services been called in time, Natalie's life would have been saved. While Wagner has still not chosen to speak publicly about the matter, Davern's steadfast allegations have kept both public and official scrutiny on Wagner's part in the tragedy. Davern has, in interviews and affidavits, expressed deep regret for failing to act more that night. The case of his testimony from silent bystander to whistleblower is indicative of the increased complexity and disturbing reality of what happened on the Splendor. Witnesses heard Natalie's chilling cries. One of the most chilling elements of the Natalie Wood case comes from independent witnesses Marilyn Wayne and John Payne, who were moored nearby on their boat the night of November 28, 1981. In the quiet, foggy hours around midnight, Marilyn reported being startled awake by the desperate sound of a woman's voice crying out, "Help me, someone, please, help me, I'm drowning." According to her sworn statements, the cries continued for approximately 15 minutes. Despite the urgency of the voice, the sounds eventually faded without any apparent rescue effort taking place. John Payne, who was also aboard, corroborated Marilyn's account. Together, they recalled hearing not just the woman's cries, but also a man's voice responding from a distance, saying in a calm and seemingly dismissive tone, "Okay, honey." That phrase has haunted the investigation for decades, raising deeply unsettling questions about whether someone on the Splendor heard Natalie and failed to act, or worse, chose not to. Marilyn emphasized that the woman's voice was unmistakably distressed and called out repeatedly, indicating she had not fallen silently into the water, as some early reports had suggested. Supposedly, the Wayne Payne testimony makes an already impressive case even more compelling for the fact that, soon after Natalie had died, both attempted to report what they had heard. Marilyn claimed that she sent a letter to law enforcement and later received anonymous threats or warnings telling her to keep mum. Then, in later interviews, she said her previous attempts to talk about the issue were ignored or downplayed during the original investigation, and there was no attention again until decades later when the case was reopened. This also adds more mystique and suspicion to an already complicated case, as an old testimony came back into the limelight. These cries are conflicting to Natalie, as no simple accident could explain her demise. She was well known for her great dread of dark water, which obviously could not encourage her to leave the yacht without anyone else. Numerous credible witnesses, along with their accounts claiming that a woman in distress was heard, a man listened passively, and fed wide speculation that a crucial opportunity would have been missed to save her life. These testimonies now stand strong among the most circumstantial evidence in existence, suggesting that Natalie Wood's last moments were anything but accidental. Natalie's fear of water. Natalie Wood's intense fear of dark water is one of the most significant factors that undermines the theory of accidental drowning. From childhood, Natalie had a deep phobia of open water, which was rooted in a terrifying prediction from a fortune teller who told her mother that Natalie would die in dark water. This fear became deeply ingrained in her psyche and shaped how she approached water throughout her life. In multiple interviews and personal conversations, Natalie expressed unease with swimming in open or deep water, particularly at night. Her sister, Lana Wood, reiterated this fear in her 2021 book, Little Sister, stating flatly that Natalie would never, ever have left the yacht alone, especially at night in stormy conditions. The night of November 28, 1981, was cold, windy, and marked by rough seas around Catalina Island. That evening, Natalie, her husband Robert Wagner, actor Christopher Walken, and yacht captain Dennis DeVerne had been drinking heavily at a local restaurant before returning to the yacht Splendor, which was moored in a remote and less protected area called Two Harbors. Notably, the dinghy that was later found beached had not been heard starting or moving that night by other nearby boaters. Wagner claimed Natalie may have tried to secure it because it was making noise, but this theory clashes with her lifelong fear of water and the weather that night. It seems implausible that someone so terrified of the ocean would climb into or even near a dinghy in complete darkness, under the influence of alcohol and medication, without alerting anyone. The attire Natalie wore when her body was discovered puts even more doubt into the theory of accidental drowning. She wore a flannel nightgown, down coat, and socks, not the type of clothing that would be worn to go out on a wet, unsteady deck, much less to get into a dinghy. This information indicates she did not plan to leave the cabin or gear up for any sort of activity on deck. Instead, her clothing suggests that she was probably in bed or ready for bed when something unusual happened. Her documented fear of water, as well as these conditions and situations, render the idea that she jumped off the yacht voluntarily extremely unlikely. In addition, several of her friends and crew members over the years verified that Natalie never used to walk on yachts unaccompanied, particularly at night. She always liked to remain in the cabin for safety when the yacht had to be anchored overnight. Even during the day, she stayed away from activities involving proximity to the edge of a vessel. This was not a casual apprehension. It was an incapacitating phobia. All of this corroborates the belief that Natalie's movement into the water that evening wasn't the product of a deliberate choice to jump off the boat or make any changes herself. Rather, the situation overwhelmingly indicates that her movement into the water involved elements outside of an innocent mistake or personal decision. The toxicology report. The coroner's report on Natalie Wood's death revealed troubling details that fueled suspicion of foul play rather than an innocent fall overboard. Her blood alcohol content was measured at 0.14%, a level indicating significant intoxication. In addition to alcohol, she had consumed motion sickness medication, Dramamine, and a painkiller, both of which can increase drowsiness and impair motor coordination, especially when combined with alcohol. While this could suggest she was simply impaired and fell accidentally, the condition of her body told a more complicated story. The autopsy documented several bruises on Natalie's body, including bruising on her arms, legs, and particularly on the left side of her face. There was also an abrasion on her cheek and a scratch on her neck, injuries that raised red flags for investigators. The coroner initially concluded these injuries could have occurred during the fall into the water or while her body was adrift. However, when the case was re-examined decades later, new forensic experts questioned whether all the injuries were consistent with accidental drowning. Some of the bruises appeared fresh and in locations that suggested a struggle, potentially occurring before she entered the water. These revelations took on added significance when combined with testimony regarding a furious argument on the yacht that evening. Captain Dennis DeVerne had long asserted that Natalie and Robert Wagner were arguing just before she vanished. He reported that loud voices and the crashing of objects could be heard coming from their cabin. Wagner subsequently owned up to having broken a bottle of wine in a fight with Christopher Walken over Natalie's career, a revelation that conflicted with his initial, more restrained account of the evening's events. Unexplained bruises heightened the suspicion that a fight could have taken place moments before Natalie disappeared. The Los Angeles County Coroner's Office changed Natalie Wood's death certificate in 2012 to include a new cause of death, drowning, and other undetermined factors. This alteration recognized that the physical evidence was unable to fully indicate a simple accident. The combination of alcohol, medications, and bruising, particularly to areas unlikely to be bruised in a simple accident, implies that Natalie's death was not just bad luck and rough seas. These red flags, which have remained unsolved for decades, still fuel public and official demands for a final explanation of what actually transpired that evening. Yet what followed may have been even more unsettling. His story didn't stay the same. Wagner's inconsistent story. Robert Wagner's version of events surrounding Natalie Wood's death has shifted noticeably over the decades, casting doubt on his credibility and intensifying public suspicion. In the immediate aftermath of Natalie's drowning in 1981, Wagner told investigators that she likely slipped and fell into the water while trying to secure a dinghy that was knocking against the yacht. He maintained that there had been no serious conflict aboard the Splendor that night and portrayed the evening as relatively uneventful. This version of the story was accepted at the time, and Natalie's death was officially ruled an accident. However, when the case was reopened in 2011 due to new witness testimonies, Wagner's account began to change. He acknowledged in later interviews that there had been a heated argument on the yacht that night, not with Natalie, but with actor Christopher Walken. According to Wagner, the confrontation was sparked by a disagreement over Natalie's career, with Walken allegedly encouraging her to prioritize her professional life over her marriage. Wagner admitted that, in a moment of anger, he smashed a wine bottle on a table, an explosive act that he had omitted in his original statement. This raised serious concerns about what else may have been left out or altered in his earlier version of events. Captain Dennis Davern had been going on about a volatile atmosphere aboard the yacht and an enraged Wagner on the night when Natalie went missing. The admission of the wine bottle incident agreed with what he had been saying for years. That shifted the old narrative of Wagner saying that everything was all right until they found out that Natalie was missing. Either that, or his later admissions of violence and emotional volatility did not sit well with his previous attempts at downplaying the situation, raising suspicion that something more might have happened between Wagner and Natalie after the fight with Walken. In 2018, Wagner officially became a person of interest for the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. Investigators noted his statements over the years were inconsistent and did not match those of other witnesses' accounts, including Davern's. Now then, Lieutenant John Carina went on air and announced that Wagner's story just doesn't add up, and that he had refused to speak with authorities concerning the reopened investigation. Those ever-changing accounts and refusal to fully comply have only made matters murky about the late Natalie Wood, and made quite a lot of people wonder whether Wagner's ever-changing narrative means he is still hiding something. Reclassification of the cause of death. For over 3 decades, Natalie Wood's tragic death in 1981 was officially classified as an accidental drowning, a conclusion that had long been questioned by her family, close friends, and segments of the public. However, a major shift occurred in July 2012, when the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office amended her death certificate to reflect a new cause, drowning and other undetermined factors. This reclassification signaled a formal recognition that the original explanation was no longer sufficient, and that new evidence and witness accounts warranted deeper scrutiny into the events leading up to her death. The decision to change the cause of death followed renewed investigations launched in 2011, prompted largely by the revised testimony of Splendor's captain, Dennis Davern, and the emergence of overlooked witness reports. Forensic experts re-examined the autopsy and noted that some of Natalie's bruises were inconsistent with typical drowning injuries. They concluded that while some could have occurred while her body was in the water, others, particularly on her arms and face, suggested possible trauma before she entered the ocean. This finding directly challenged the idea that she had simply slipped while trying to secure the yacht's dinghy. In the updated report, injuries were considered by the coroner to have occurred possibly before entering the water, and bruising, in any case, was not consistent with a simple fall overboard. The new certificate's buzzword, undetermined factors, echoed the growing suspicion that Natalie Wood may have been the victim of foul play, or at least other factors that were not purely accidental. This statement did not single out any person, but reiterates that this case is still open and unresolved, and events may occur if others come forward with information. The formal change was crucial. It was the first time governmental agencies would openly consider Natalie Wood's passing as perhaps more than a tragic accident. This gave credence to questions raised for years by Lana Wood, Natalie Wood's sister, and others who felt the initial investigation was hasty and incomplete. New weight was added against Robert Wagner, whose own contradictory statements and hesitance on the recommendations of investigators only raise further suspicion in light of this new revelation. Although the investigation remains open, the amended death certificate is a formal assertion that the mystery surrounding what really took place that night on the Splendor is far from solved. Lana Wood's bold accusations and revelations. Natalie Wood's younger sister, Lana Wood, has been one of the most vocal and persistent figures pushing for the truth about what happened the night Natalie died. For decades, Lana has challenged the official narrative of accidental drowning and has publicly accused Robert Wagner of being involved in her sister's death. In numerous interviews and public appearances, Lana has insisted that Natalie was terrified of dark water and would never have left the yacht on her own. She would never have gone to the side of the boat alone in her nightgown and socks, Lana stated in a 2021 interview with Business Insider. Her conviction has been unwavering, fueled by what she describes as glaring inconsistencies in Wagner's story. In her 2021 memoir, Little Sister, My Investigation into the Mysterious Death of Natalie Wood, Lana shared deeply personal accounts and previously unknown details that reignited interest in the case. One of the most disturbing revelations in the book was a secret Natalie had allegedly confided in her about a traumatic event from her teenage years. Lana claimed that when Natalie was just 16, their mother arranged a meeting with actor Kirk Douglas, hoping he could help Natalie's career. That meeting, according to Natalie, ended in indecent assault. "He hurt me, Lana," Natalie reportedly said, words that haunted her sister for decades. While not directly tied to the events on the Splendor, this revelation highlighted the many traumas Natalie had endured behind the scenes of her glamorous public life. Lana has always supported the claims of Dennis Davern, the captain of the yacht, who accused Wagner of stymieing a timely search for Natalie and acting strangely in the hours following her disappearance. According to Lana, there are serious question marks about Wagner's behavior before and after her sister's death. She has pointed to Wagner's refusal to cooperate with authorities upon reopening the case as an indication that he was probably self-conscious and guilty. "If you have nothing to hide, why not speak to investigators?" she said in a television interview. Lana's public campaign has been an emotional and relentless journey, stemming from her personal loss and a firmly held belief that the complete truth has never been told. These accusations and revelations by Lana have been very instrumental in keeping the case alive in the public eye. In speaking about the case and the people involved in it, Lana has confronted some powerful figures in Hollywood. she has focused attention on the gaps and contradictions in the original investigation. She has repeatedly called for Wagner to be interrogated under oath, saying that with time and silence, the questions only become more troubling. The pursuit of truth for Lana Wood is about more than just accountability. It is her way of honoring her sister's memory and ensuring that Natalie Wood is remembered not only as a great actress, but as a woman whose death remains wrapped in mystery and deserves absolute justice. Hollywood's Code of Silence and Power. In the early 1980s, Hollywood operated under a powerful culture of secrecy and image control, where studios and publicists worked hard to protect the reputations of stars and suppress scandals. This environment helped insulate prominent figures like Robert Wagner from public scrutiny, even in cases involving serious allegations. At the time of Natalie Wood's death in 1981, Wagner was a well-established actor with decades of industry influence, and his marriage to Natalie painted a picture of a golden Hollywood couple. When tragedy struck aboard the Splendor, the initial investigation into Natalie's drowning was surprisingly brief and largely unquestioned, shaped by a tendency in the entertainment industry and among law enforcement to avoid confronting uncomfortable truths about its stars. This culture of silence is perhaps best exemplified by how long it took for Natalie Wood's alleged assault by Kirk Douglas to come to light. According to her sister Lana, Natalie confided that she had been assaulted by Douglas at age 16 during a meeting arranged by their mother to advance Natalie's career. At the time, such incidents were rarely reported or discussed publicly, especially when they involved powerful male figures. Lana claims Natalie returned from the encounter visibly shaken, whispering, "He hurt me, Lana." But because of the era's climate, where female voices were often dismissed and reputations fiercely protected, the alleged assault remained a buried trauma for decades, never investigated, never exposed. In the same way, Wagner's behavior and contradictory words after Natalie died were not given the level of examination that could have been expected had Wagner not been such a powerful person. Even with solid eyewitness testimony and contradictions of what happened the night she disappeared, Wagner was never questioned officially as a suspect in 1981. Captain Dennis Davern subsequently asserted he was bullied into silence, and witnesses such as Marilyn Wayne claimed they were dismissed or even intimidated. Such variables indicate an institutionalized unwillingness to investigate when it involved going against the public persona of a popular celebrity. More recently, the #MeToo movement and greater desire to revisit long-overlooked Hollywood wrongdoing have put a different spin on Natalie's tale. The news of her trauma, the questionable nature of her death, and her reluctance to fully pursue Wagner all date back to an era in which power generally trumped accountability. Although the entertainment world has started to change, Natalie Wood's case is still a harsh reminder of how fame, power, and a culture of silence once conspired to hide ugly truths in plain sight. This protective shield wasn't just about suppressing personal gaffes. Frequently, it involved sculpting entire stories in the aftermath of tragedy. As ex-prosecutor Sam Perroni observed in Vanity Fair, if a non-celebrity couple were doing this on a lake, somewhere in the middle of the country, the husband would have been questioned that night, highlighting the way celebrity could stall or divert justice beyond anything imaginable for regular citizens. But as the veil of Hollywood's silence slowly lifted, investigators turned their attention back to the man who had remained at the center of it all. Robert Wagner, officially a person of interest. In a pivotal shift nearly 4 decades after Natalie Wood's mysterious death, Robert Wagner was officially named a person of interest in 2018 by the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. Investigators cited mounting inconsistencies in Wagner's statements and noted that his version of events differed from those of other witnesses present on the yacht Splendor the night Natalie disappeared. Lieutenant John Corina, a lead detective on the case, told CBS News, "As we've investigated the case over the last 6 years, I think he's more of a person of interest now," confirming that Wagner's evolving narrative raised serious red flags. Wagner's repeated refusal to speak with investigators following the 2011 reopening of the case only deepened public suspicion. As the last person known to have been with Natalie before she went missing, Wagner declined multiple interview requests, despite growing pressure. Captain Dennis Davern, who had served on the Splendor, accused Wagner of delaying search efforts and discouraging any immediate response once Natalie was discovered missing, claims that added to the urgency of re-examining Wagner's role. For detectives and observers alike, Wagner's silence and inconsistent retellings painted a troubling picture. Adding to the confusion was the virtual silence of actor Christopher Walken, who was also on the yacht that evening. In his sole in-depth interview about the incident, published in Playboy in 2012, Walken vaguely intimated that Natalie may have gone up on deck to fix the dinghy and have fallen overboard, repeating Wagner's initial story. But that account has since been undermined by forensic testaments, witness accounts, and Natalie's own notorious aquaphobia. Walken has refused further comment, a gap which still fuels speculation and anger. Even though Wagner was never formally charged with a crime, his status as a person of interest highlights the case's ongoing complexity. Vanity Fair reports that revived media attention and public suspicion have maintained the case in the headlines, especially following revelations by Natalie's sister, Lana Wood, and new forensic evidence. Another strong aspect of the case arises from words spoken by Los Angeles County Sheriff's authorities, who highlighted that Wagner's hesitation to give a coherent, sequential explanation contrasted with the accumulating evidence gathered over the years. In a special report for 48 Hours, Lieutenant John Corina had this to say, "I haven't seen him tell the details that match all the other witnesses." Police noted that Wagner's behavior and timeline not only contradicted that of Captain Dennis Davern's, but also didn't account for essential gaps of time while Natalie was missing. Furthermore, advancements in forensic technology have made it increasingly difficult to ignore physical evidence, such as bruises that defy an accidental fall. These revelations indicate that the case, which was buried beneath celebrity fame and industry cover-up, has entered a more fact-oriented phase. As cold case investigators delve deeper, the tension between testimony and science continues to put pressure on the silence surrounding Wagner's involvement. On the occasion of his 95th birthday in 2025, Wagner keeps silent on the inquiry publicly, only celebrating with family, according to People. That silence, though, speaks for many. The death of Natalie Wood is one that still oozes skepticism, concealed information, and one dominant male still with answers due. Thanks for watching. If this story left you with questions or theories, drop them in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more true Hollywood mysteries, and hit the bell so you never miss an update. And if you're ready for the next twist, click the video on your screen now.